Okay, so we're going to work on some notation for doing our vertical and horizontal shifts. In a vertical shift, okay, f of x equals 2 to the x power is our original function. Okay, if I'm shifting up 3, that means I'm taking our entire function, I'm making a new function, and I'm adding 3. Okay, so my new function will be my old function plus 3, and that's a notation. Sometimes they don't write the function itself, they just write the f of x. Or, since f of x equals 2x, that's two different ways of writing it. Okay, one is in terms of f of x, and one is in terms of 2x. All right, f of x equals 5 to the x power, and it says shift 2 down. That means we're taking our entire function, we're taking f of x, and we're subtracting 2 from it. So if f of x equals 5 to the x power, basically, guys, I'm just subbing these things out. Okay, if f of x equals 2 of x, 2x, then I'm just substituting those things in and out of g of x because they're equal to each other. All right, so that means on the homework, what they want you to do, and let me increase the size a little bit here. Okay. My original function is f of x equals x. My new function is g of x equals x minus 8. Another way of writing that is g of x equals f of x minus 8. Why can I do that? Because x and f of x are equal to each other. I'm just substituting one for the other. Okay, number 5, g of x equals f of x plus 2. Okay. Then, where's my button? There we go. In my coordinates, okay, let's put these in the calculator. 5 to the x, and the second function, 5 to the x minus 2. Whoops. Remember to arrow out of the exponent. And we're going to look at the table. What you can see in the table is that for any value of x, the y values are, the original y value is 125 at the level 3. Okay. The new y value after the transformation, after the vertical shift, is 123. It went down 2. Okay, just like the function said. If I look at the graph, okay, I can see that the red function is the shifted down function, and at any given point, the x values are the same, but the y values shift down 2. So what this notation is doing right here is it's giving us a way of showing what the coordinates do. Okay, so my original xy represents a set of coordinates from f of x. Arrow means maps onto. Okay, in a vertical shift, the x values stay the same, but the y value changes, and it went down by 2, which matches what the g of x does. Okay, so how is this useful to us? Well, let's pick a point in f of x. 2 and 25. So 2 and 25 are our original point from f of x. If I want to know what the new point is, I would just sub in. So an x value of 2 stays an x value of 2. The y value is 25 minus 2. So if I evaluate that, 2 stays, 25 take away 2 is 23. It's just, all this is a way of determining the coordinates from one point to the next without looking them up on your calculator. Okay? On your homework, what that looks like, what they want you to do, they actually don't even want you to take it as far as I just showed you. Okay? What they want you to do is just write that an original xy from f of x would map onto an x staying the same and the y value going down by 4. That's all they're asking you to do. Okay, horizontal shifts. So f of x equals 2x. A shift right, remember, means x take away 3. We're only subtracting 3 from the x. So what that looks like is g of x equals, if I'm going to do it in terms of f of x, means x minus 3 in parentheses, because we're only subtracting 3 from the x. If we're going to write that in terms of the 2x, okay, now if I just write x minus 3, that's subtracting 3 from the whole function. If I want to show subtracting 3 from only the x, I put it in parentheses, and it ends up looking like a distributive property. Okay, let's look at the other problem, other example. F of x equals 5 to the x power, and it says shift left 2. So that means we're going to add 2. Because remember I said in our last lesson that left seems like it would be subtract, but x always works in the opposite direction of what you think it's going to do. So our g of x equals f of x plus 2. Or if I'm writing it in terms of 5 to the x power, it's 5 to the x plus 2. Okay? So in class, what caused a lot of confusion is, well, why is the plus 2 an exponent here, but not here? Well, that's because x is an exponent when it's with the 5, but it's not an exponent when it's in parentheses with the f of x. So if we go to the homework, scroll down. Okay. Guys, I'm not looking at you writing. This part right here is a duplicate of what's already there. I'm not looking for you to write that part. All I'm looking for you to write is that g of x equals f of x minus 1. We're just practicing that other notation of writing our shifted functions in terms of f of x. So g of x equals f of x minus 3. Okay. coordinates. Okay, so let's go and look at this again. We've got f of x and f of x plus 2. So this is 5 to the x plus 2. Okay, now if we look at the graph, all right, let me pull this out for just a second so I can write on it. Okay, so the blue function represents our original function, and let's just look at this point right here. I'm going to make it a different color so it stands out here. All right, we'll just pick the y-intercept, all right? We moved over 2 to the left, okay? So this coordinate right here is 0, 1. This coordinate right here on our new point is -2, 1. So what changed and what stayed the same? The x value subtracted by 2 and the y value stayed the same. So if I'm going to write a coordinate rule for this, it would be that my original point would map onto x minus 2, but y stays the same. Now, wait a minute, Mrs. Andrews. It said up here plus 2. Well, remember what I said about x. It works backwards from what you think. Okay? So what's the purpose of that? The purpose of that is that if I knew some points or a point in one function and I wanted a point in the other, like let's say I was talking about the point 225 in the original function, 225. And I wanted to know what that would have been on the red line. 2 subs in for x, minus 2, and 25 stays the same. So 225 would become 0.25. Let's just check that. Yep, 0.25. And on the homework, we're going to write our mapping. So x minus y, x minus y. X comma y maps onto x, not plus 1. Remember, it's opposite land, and when we're talking about x, and y stays the same. Let's try that one more time. X comma y maps onto x plus 1, opposite, and y stays the same. The rest of this video I'm just going to be showing different parts of the homework. Okay? I skipped this section of the homework and did not have my students do that. If you did, well, you're on your own. Okay, this section The directions are to sketch the graph of g of x based on what they tell you that g of x is in terms of f of x. So if this says that f of x plus 4, we're adding 4 to the entire function. Adding 4 to the entire function means we're going up 4. So when it says sketch, guys, it doesn't mean like just throw a curve in there anywhere, okay? Make yourself some points where you see our exponential curve crossing a coordinate pair nicely. I always do one out here on the asymptote as well, just to make sure I angle my line down correctly and across correctly. And then it says to go up 4. Okay, so I'll start at this dot and go up 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I started at this dot and tried to count up 4, I would run out. So I'm not going to do that. But I have enough dots now to sketch in a curve. So the important part to me is knowing what to do. Okay, I'm sure we can all count to 4. So the important part to me is you interpreting and writing the words up 4 here. Because after that, that's the easy part. So let's scroll down. I want to do 34. Okay, 34 is subtracting 3 just from x. If I'm subtracting 3 just from x, that means it's a horizontal shift, and minus 3 seems like it would be left, but it's right. X's do the opposite. So I'm going to the right 3. Here again, it's more important to me that you knew to write this. Okay? Drawing the graph should be easy after that. Pick some points. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now this is not technically on a coordinate pair, but it's, middle of the box, middle of the box, middle of the box. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Should probably label that g of x. I know I didn't label 32, but we probably should have. Okay, the next section, the directions want you to write the equation of the function given the translation. So a vertical translation of down 5 units means subtract 5 from the entire function. So g of x will equal x minus 5. Horizontal translation, left 6 means plus 6 only for the x, not f of x. So g of x would equal 2 to the x plus 6 power, adding 6 only to the x. And lastly, last section. Okay. Now, this is a kind of a tricky one because, let me find my arrow tool here. this line, I could say, oh, it moved 6 units left, or I could say it moved 6 units up. What's helpful to know, and the directions don't tell you this, they don't tell you that you have to figure this out, is that the original function is f of x equals x. Well, moving up 6 would be plus 6, and moving left 6 would be plus 6. So it's plus 6 either way, and if you're adding 6 to just the x, okay, that's g of x equals x plus 6. Or if you're adding 6 to the entire function, well, x is the entire function. So you get the same thing either way. So that one, it's kind of a weird way to ask it. Weird question to ask. But it becomes much easier on the second page. Guys, all the graphs on this page, all the original graphs on this page, all of them are f of x equals 2 to the x power. All of them. And that would be helpful to know to do the other part, to find the equation of g of x. So helpful to know that. And that's what we're trying to do, is find the equation for g of x. So let me blow this back up again. So if I were doing number 47, I already know that f of x equals 2 to the x power, because Ms. Anders just told you. And what I see is that the graph went up 2. Up 2 means that for g of x, I'm just going to label it right here on the graph, g of x equals 2 to the x, up 2 means plus 2, to the entire function. Okay, let's pick another one. Let's do 49. So in 49, again, our original function is f of x equals 2 to the x. I'm seeing that it is shifting 3 units to the right. 3 units to the right means x minus 3, just the x. So g of x would be 2 to the x minus 3. Okay, this is a long video. Hope you stuck with me through the whole thing, or just fast forwarded to the parts you needed. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.